Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let me also say, too, the promo code for new accounts on FanDuel for big discounts is Dwyer777. Right? Give yourself a break. Save some money if you're into fantasy sports. Now, first, somebody's got to do this in boxing, right? Danny Garcia was challenged. Unbeaten Danny Garcia was challenged by Terrence Crawford, right? Why? Because Danny Garcia dodged Victor Postal. Terrence Crawford then, when Postal became his mandatory, took on and dismantled Victor Postal, right? So Crawford, of course, decided, hey, Postal's not enough. I feel I'm the best, or certainly one of the best in the sport pound for pound. So he challenged Danny Garcia. Andre Berto stepped out of the weeds. He challenged Danny Garcia. Understand, guys like Keith Thurman and Sean Porter would fight Danny Garcia in a heartbeat. Who did Danny Garcia pick for his next fight? John Molina Jr. Come on now. Let me reach back here. Pretend this is a red flag. In fact, we'll just call it a red cup. I'm tossing a red cup here on Danny Garcia. Somebody involved in the sport has to boo these champions who decide to give us uncompetitive fights. Right? Absolutely absurd. Right? We applaud fighters who give us the tough fights. We should boo fighters who give us fights like this. Obviously, Danny, unbeaten, champion, he can do what he wants. Right? Champs are entitled to pick their opponents when they have voluntaries. But this was a bit disappointing, isn't it? Right? If Danny wants to be considered among boxing's best pound for pound, he's going to have to do a better job than this. All right, let's talk about the huge fight coming up over in the UK. Right? Understand it's for the Ring Magazine lightweight title. It's for the WBC Diamond lightweight title. It's for the WBA World lightweight title. And it's between the hometown guy, Anthony $1 Million Crolla. Right? And he's fighting Jorge Linares. Now, the hometown guy is favored in this fight. Excellent body puncher. He gets by on timing. He's very smooth. As you watch him in the ring, you notice, he keeps it even keel. Right? Very nimble. Has a high guard. Interestingly enough, he knows how to be aggressive without throwing punches, right? So, you look at fights like his fight against Ismael Barrasso, and you'll notice that Barrasso throws punches, he backs up. Then when he gets back in the pocket, he keeps coming forward, even without throwing punches, right? This is the kind of guy who doesn't get too excited. The living room's on fire. This is the guy who, while the couch is burning, takes out the cell phone and calmly says, "Hi, I need to report a fire. The address here is ABC 123 Street. The couch is burning." Right? This is the guy making the calm call to the police. Right? He has good legs which allow him to bend at the knees. That enables him to stay in punching position even as he's ducking down. He is a bit of an arm puncher. He does have a KO ratio of under 40%. Now, with all of that said about $1 Million Crolla, right, I'm taking the other guy, the underdog in this fight, fighting on the road. What could possibly go wrong? Well, let me just say this. Jorge Linares has certain gifts. Life's unfair. But he has certain gifts that I'm not sure he's ever figured out what to do with, right? In terms of these two guys, and I know many are going to disagree with me, 31-year-old Linares is the better athlete. He certainly has the faster hands. He also has significantly more power, right? This is a guy who's a bit of a boxer puncher, right? But just like Shane Mosley when he was younger, there's something going on with Linares that just doesn't allow him to take the easy way to victory, right? He tends to trade a bit too much. Even with hand speed, good legs, right? Physical gifts. Somehow he's in the ring against Brian Mitchell. And you notice this is a guy with gifts who, for whatever reason, when the house is on fire, right? He's the guy who, to me, panics a little bit. He gets drawn into shootouts, right? He's the guy who hears that the house is haunted and continues to live in it. This is the fly that flies too close to the flame. So, against Kevin Mitchell, he's lingering around the pocket, even though he knows he doesn't have the best chin. He knows that. He's been hurt in fights. What happens? He gets dropped in that fight. Has to get off the canvas. Is there in a shootout with a guy who wants a shootout, right? He's the opposite of the kind of fighter I talk about when I say, hey, the fight doesn't start until you get by this guy's jab, right? Linares has a good jab, but the fight's going to start in the first round because Linares is going to throw many of his tools out the window and he's going to start to exchange with you. Now, granted, that's a shortcoming when it comes to Jorge Linares. That's probably why he's the underdog in this fight. But understand the top end. If both of these guys are on their A games, if Linares brings his offensive skills into the ring, right, and if both guys decide to exchange, the underdog Linares is going to have a decided advantage. He throws the shorter punches. Crolla's routine of walking around the ring without throwing punches, waiting for the right opportunity, understand that falls apart style-wise against a guy blessed with the kind of hand speed that Linares has. Right? So, understand too, Linares, a Venezuelan, has fought out of Japan for years. Look at his resume. This is a guy who travels around the globe. He's an international fighter, right? I don't believe traveling to the UK for this fight is going to be any different than, what he's done in the past, right? I believe he's going to be able to handle the pressure. I think he's going to handle the moment. When you look at his past, too, you realize he's better than advertised. In my opinion, he's outboxing Tony DeMarco. Right? The problem was he was also outbleeding Tony DeMarco. Right? He had a cut, it was bleeding, it got bloody, it looked bad. Right? A lot of judges are going to look at the bloody fighter and say, well, obviously, this is the guy who's hurt. This is the guy losing the fight. But if you look at the actual boxing in that match, I thought Linares held his own. Right? I thought Linares, quite frankly, had the upper hand from a boxing perspective. I thought he was much more talented than Tony DeMarco. The other fights Linares lost are fights where he got caught. I agree. The guy doesn't have the best chin. And I agree. The guy insists on putting himself in harm's way. right? He's the guy who could box but prefers to fight. But understand here, he's fighting a guy who doesn't have Kevin Mitchell's punch, right? He's fighting a guy, I know Crolla is on a KO binge of late, but he's fighting a guy who doesn't have the big punch. And if these guys start trading shot for shot, I'm going to go with the guy who has the better than 60% KO ratio and more hand speed, right, over the guy who has the sub 40% KO percentage. Let me say this too. The 10th round of the Mitchell fight, there's a moment in that round where he has Mitchell hurt up against the ropes. He then starts flashing hand speed. Folks, it's dazzling. As you look at him, understand this is the 10th round of the fight. Everyone has hand speed in the first round, right? Linares is just gifted with hand speed for all 12 rounds, right? Mitchell had his moments in the fight, right? Mitchell had his moments in the fight. But what I want you to do, too, is to read the cuts. When that fight is stopped, I just want you to look around Mitchell's eyes. He had been worked over, right? Worked over. I think Linares is the superior talent here. I think the casinos have priced this fight the wrong way. I'm going with the underdog here. The WBC fighter over the WBA fighter. I'm going with Jorge Linares over Anthony Crolla, who has been on a roll. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Right, somebody's got to make the market at these casinos. Sign me up for the underdog on this one. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.